Midnight Suns is a strange game, and it's one that I'm finding very difficult to recommend. It's one that feels deeply connected to the games of the developer's past, but incredibly dissonant from its source material. You almost have to look at it as if it's two different games, with one half of it being an incredibly rich, layered and dense strategy game with a unique combat system to match, and the other a lifeless drab that feels straight ripped out of the PS3 era. I find myself constantly pushing through the next boring story section to get another go at the combat, and while that isn't the markings of a great game, it really does just go to show how great that combat is. The game takes place in an entirely new Marvel universe, disconnected from all Marvel universes we've seen before, and it follows Hydra as they resurrect an evil sorceress called Lilith, who's the mother of demons. When things suddenly start getting out of hand, Doctor Strange suggests reviving an ancient superhero called the Hunter, who once defeated Lilith before. This is where you come in. You take control of the Hunter and design them how you want to take on this supernatural threat. From here, you join up with a team of 13 superheroes from groups like the Avengers, X-Men, and the Runaways, all just to stop Lilith and save the world. There's a strong balance to the roster of heroes, mixing popular heavy hitters like Iron Man and Captain America with less known ones like Magic and Nico Minoru. This also makes for a great representation of powers from different corners of the Marvel universe. While it's a pretty simple Marvel affair of a group of heroes taking on a big bad, it's the combat where things get interesting. You see, Midnight Suns is developed by Firaxis, who are notable for the Civilization and the XCOM series, so the combat is deeply rooted in strategy, and it features a card system. This will probably spawn an immediate red flag with hundreds of people, and was something the developers were trying to avoid from the get-go. However, this isn't a microtransaction-filled game. Cards are all included in the full experience, and realistically, it's just a replacement for standard menu UI. The difference here between Midnight Suns and XCOM is instead of just random chance menus, it's random chance cards. The cards don't ever feel like a burden, and you never feel like you're getting shafted because you don't have the correct deck. So immediately, I just want to try and put your worries to rest that the card system is actually really solid. Each mission you go on allows you to take 3 heroes, each with their own unique deck of 8 cards that you can choose beforehand. There are attack cards for performing attack, skill cards for support and utility-based actions, and heroic cards which let you perform special attacks or skills for heroism points. You start combat with a random selection of cards from the 3 combined decks, then you're presented with your first turn when you get to figure out the puzzle of how to defeat your enemies and meet your objective. Again, this is very similar to the games of Firaxis' past, especially that of XCOM. So if you found yourself enjoying XCOM games before, we can imagine you'll find the same sort of enjoyment here in Midnight Suns. And while the idea of randomized decks in a strategy game does sound quite daunting, I never really felt like I had any problems with it. I always felt like I was given a reasonably good hand for the situation I was dealt, and it also made me think outside the box in a lot of situations. Maybe I had to move to use a specific attack, or use the environment to my advantage to get the upper hand on the enemy. When you get dealt the right hand with the right battlefield, finding the solution to the puzzle is incredibly satisfying, and it's that engaging gameplay that kept me coming back for more and more hour after hour. Realistically, if you're coming into this game, you're coming into it for the combat. You can clearly see it's where Firaxis shine in the development, and it's where the game works its best. However, it's when you get out of the combat that things start to take a hit. In between missions, you're put into the Abbey. It's a hub world where all the Midnight Suns gather together. It's at this point that the game turns from a strategy to a sort of light role-playing game. You'll meet other heroes, upgrade your cards, go through your inventory, use an entire superhero social network, and even go on dates with the various characters. You'll find yourself constantly wandering around the Abbey with different things to do, except none of the things feel like things I should be doing. I can't say in between an incredibly satisfying combat scenario that I wanted Iron Man to go on a date with Magic. Interacting with these characters just isn't very fun, and the biggest problem with the game is that it punishes you for not interacting with these characters. It rewards you in combat by giving your heroes passives, rewarding you with new cards, and even unlocking legendary cards, meaning realistically you have to go through these pretty dull sections quite often. Choosing to avoid all of this will provide you with a significantly lesser experience than you would get had you interacted with them. And so realistically, if you're like me, you'll probably just end up skipping a lot of cutscenes. The writing in the game feels like you're watching the worst type of Marvel movie. The characters don't feel like the characters that we've got to know and love, and it's a problem that we found in games like Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. And with the stellar writing of the Spider-Man games, we know that Marvel gaming can be done right. It just really isn't done here. And that's not the only time that it feels like a 2007 Marvel experience. At times, some of the Abbey sections feel ripped straight out of early movie tie-in games. Heroes will stand in superhero poses no matter the scenario. And although we were playing an early release version of the game and this could all be patched out with a day one patch, it ran pretty poorly. It almost feels like we've gone back in time to the days of Marvel Ultimate Alliance rather than the modern trappings of Spider-Man and the Arkham series. No one interacts how you would expect them to interact, and it's clear that if any corners were cut in this game, they were cut in the Abbey. But I want to make it clear, as much as this story doesn't land, playing with Marvel heroes in these combat scenarios is still incredibly fun, and as a Marvel fan myself, I still find myself enjoying playing in these scenarios. While I ended up skipping most of the story stuff, the combat still kept me coming back, and even to this day, I want to play more of it. If you're coming at this as a mega Marvel fan who just wants more Marvel content, then maybe this game isn't for you. But if you're coming at this as a strategy fan, then maybe it might be. It's hard to recommend this to anyone who didn't enjoy the XCOM games. But with a new take on the combat system, maybe this will be the game that brings you into those franchises. Whether or not you'll be able to stomach the 60 hours of meh storytelling, well, that's up to you. We're giving Midnight Suns a 7 out of 10. Make sure to read the full written review in the link below, and we'll see you back here on GG Recon for more Midnight Suns content.